My name is Ben Cao, and I am a first-year full-time MBA student at UCLA Anderson. And this is Tao Xiang, a second-year undergrad student at UCLA, majoring in computer science. We are co-directors of today's panel discussion, Embracing Innovation to Shape the Path Forward. Mass entrepreneurship and innovation in science, technology, research, and development will be key to global and domestic economic growth in the United States and China. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang stressed the role of innovation in China's 13th five-year plan, calling for further efforts to foster new growth sources and upgrade traditional ones. Increased cooperation and greater collaboration between China and the United States along the world's most innovative economy will be critical to harness innovation, developing emerging technologies, and establishing new ventures. Our panelists this afternoon will share their experiences driving innovation and change by developing new strategies, technologies, products, and business models, and share their lessons learned from cross-border collaborations.
Today, we are delighted to welcome the following distinguished speakers on this panel. Xianhui Xu, Executive Director, Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, U.S. Office. Brandon Riley, Vice President, Fleet Sales, BRD Motors. Jeff Morgan, Vice President, Finance, International Vitamin Corporation. This panel will be moderated by Chris Tang. Mr. Tang is a UCLA Distinguished Professor and the holder of Edward W. Carter Chain in Business Administration. He joined UCLA in 1985 and served as Senior Associate Dean and Chairman from 1998 to 2002. Dean of the Business School at National University of Singapore for 2002 to 2004. And Senior Advisor to President of National University of Singapore from 2000 to 2002. Currently, he serves as President of the Production Operations Management Society and as Chairman of Advisory Board of Hong Kong Polytechnic University Business School. His research spans across different areas including global supply chain management, retail operations, and social business operations.
Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon panel sessions. It's an honor for me to have these three distinguished gentlemen to join me on the stage to talk about innovation. It's a topic that I would love to learn more about. So before I start, let me introduce each of our distinguished panelists in more details. So starting with Mr. Jeff Moran. He's the Vice President of the Finance in the International Vitamin Corporation. Before he joined IVC, Mr. Moran served as a Chief Financial Officer at DTT, an industry-leading technology-based surveillance company. Before that, he served as Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of SIN Energy, an international energy management cloud-based software company headquartered in San Francisco. Before that, he held COO and CFO positions at numerous firms, including Brighton Collectibles, Nielsen, Nutraceutical, and Pharmavite. Jeff has also held executive roles with some of the largest brands in the world, including Nestle, Dryer Ice Cream, Thrifty Drugstores, and he has a master's degree, Master of Management degree in Marketing and Strategy from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, as well as a bachelor degree from University of Minnesota. So please join me welcome Jeff Moran. To his right is Mr. Xu. Xianhui Xu is Executive Director of the COMAC. It stands for Commercial Aircraft Corporations of China. Xianhui has served as the Executive Director of COMAC since 2013. In his role, he is responsible for the shareholder relationships, corporate management and public relations. Before he moved to the US, he was a director of COMAC's general office in Shanghai, where he was responsible for corporate relations with the public, government, and suppliers. From 2005 to 2008, he was the deputy director of the Beijing Organizing Committee for the Olympic Games in 2008 in the Media Operations Department and National Swimming Center in Beijing. Before that position, she was previously a journalist for Xianhui, a news agency, the China's national news agency and leading media group. So please join me welcome Mr. Xi. Last but not least is Mr. Brandon Riley. He's the Vice President of the Fleet Sales of BYD Motors Incorporated. Brandon is he joined BYD in 2012 with over 23 years of experience in the area of business development, sales strategy, and operations. Originally, he was hired to run the BYD electric bus sales. BYD has awarded the largest funded contract for electric bus by the Long Beach Public Transit Company. In 2013, BYD was awarded another largest US electric bus contract for the Los Angeles Metro. And more recently, BYD also won another contract for the Denver's the 16th Street Mall contract. He also helped to negotiate the purchase and set up the 2 manufacturing plants in Lancaster, California, to produce electric bus and batteries in the US. Brandon is leading his sales and engineering team to build BYD's green transportation dream in North America by heading up the electric truck, electric forklift, and electric taxi groups. Before that, he served as Vice President of Sales and Marketing at PTB Sales in Azusa, California. He served 2 terms as the President of Southern California chapter of the AVS for Science and Technology. Riley received his bachelor's degree from the University of San Tommaso in Rome and is fluent in English and Italian. He has 1 US patent and holds a helicopter and multi-engine instrument pilot license. So please join me to welcome Brandon as well. Okay, so we should let the game start. So let me start with Jeff, okay? And he's the Vice President of IVC. Jeff, in your view, what does innovation mean to your company? And also, what do you think the big trend of innovation in your industry?
You know, what's interesting about innovation is when you think about it, you think about products, or you think about, you know, an Apple Watch or whatever. But our company was really, the innovation was an idea. And it was an idea that started about 7 years ago, and it was about how do we take a small Chinese manufacturing company and make a company that was manufacturing vitamins and supplements and turn it into a global healthcare company. It's a very unique company that I work for. Our investors are Chinese. My boss, our CEO, is also Chinese, but he's been in the U.S. now for several years and has been in our space. And so the innovation that has helped our company is really building a very strong U.S. domestic vitamin and supplement business. We're a private label manufacturer. We manufacture vitamins for all the major retailers in the country. And we've done it by being very innovative about our global supply chain. So we have manufacturing both in China and here in the United States. We've convinced our customers and the consumers that the products made, whether they're in China or the U.S., are safe and healthy for you. And then we've built an incredible management team to help really to grow the business. So for us, innovation has not, of course we've also come up with new products and new concepts, but it's really been about the idea of how do we build this really strong healthcare business that can take advantage of both our Chinese and U.S. knowledge.
Okay, in that sense, in terms of the interaction between China and U.S., so what kind of innovative ideas that IVC has adopted or explored recently?
you know, we do a lot of market research. We go to a lot of conferences. I just spent the last 2 days in New York City at both an investor conference, which is really about a lot of entrepreneurs that are coming together with new ideas, whether it's, for example, there's a company that had melatonin is a pill that helps you sleep. They have a spray version of it, so a different kind of a form factor or a delivery factor. We work with our suppliers across the globe to get ideas from them. And right now, I think what's important to people is things like probiotics, so stomach health, brain health, plant-based protein powders, sports nutrition. Those are some of the things that are really on everybody's mind right now as we look to the future.
It's fascinating that you are willing or interested to learn from the suppliers and all the players along the supply chain, and they also invite them to suggest ideas. Now, among all the ideas they put forward, how do you evaluate which idea is considered more innovative and which ideas you should put it in the back burner, if you will?
Well, it's interesting because I'm obviously our Chief Financial Officer, so you would think we'd have our Chief Innovation Officer up here, but I really look at myself as being an investment CFO. So my job is to make sure that we're allocating our capital wisely. So we look at any given time, we probably have a portfolio of 30 to 40 new ideas and products that we're looking at. And so it's a combination of looking at the trends in the industry, the market research, but we also go and tap into our customer base, okay, and our consumer base, and talk to them about how do they feel about these items, how do they feel about the salability of those items. So it's really a collaborative effort in terms of all of our network that we talk to about new products.
Thank you. So let me move on to Xianhui Xu from the COMAC for commercial aircraft, and it's a very exciting time. I think China launched the first single-aisle commercial aircraft last year. So to begin with, I would like you to comment on what is innovation mean to your company, and second is what do you think the trends of innovation in the commercial aircraft industry?
Well, before I talk about the importance of innovation in our company, I want to stress the importance of traditional and reliable technology in this industry, because we are manufacturing civil jetliner, and the aircraft is supposed to fly more than 20 years, and with thousands of taking off and landing. So to us, the traditional and reliable technology is much more important for us. That's why our company stress the importance of the reliable technology, and so in that case we want to make the more safer and cost-effective and eco-friendly, and so we always put safety first. And as for innovation, we focus on the shaping up of this company, and also in the process of program management process. And because in America, maybe it's you just take it for granted that we can manage this program in this way or that way. But in China, if we want to manage such a large project, we have to find new ways to make it happen. So innovation for us exceeds the dimension of technology only. We are focusing bigger field in talking about innovation. As for the trend of this industry, I think actually, not too much, revolutionary changes happen in the past years in the field of civil aviation. You know, Boeing is celebrating the 100 years anniversary this year. And actually, you know, they invented the Boeing 747 in the 1960s, and it is still flying. Not so many revolutionary changes happen. So I think the innovation in this field will focus on new materials, I think. New materials, composite materials. Instead of iron and steel, yeah, it will be much, much more lighter, much more reliable. Yes.
Well, thank you. So you mentioned about materials in terms of the important one. So in your opinion, would you view the Boeing 787 is considered a new or revolutionary aircraft? And also, if that's the case, is COMAC is also trying to actually leapfrog that kind of composite materials to compete?
Yeah, Boeing 787 is a very good aircraft, and how to say? I cannot comment too much for that because you know we are competitors, and also we are partners. So, but anyway, it's a very good aircraft, and also COMAC is also thinking of to adopt composite materials in our upcoming models of jetliners.
Great, thank you. So let me move on to Brandon before we'll open the general question for all three gentlemen. So Brandon, you work with BYD. It's a very exciting company, and in California, we're crazy about electric car. So you're right here. So basically, again, we would like to know from your expert's opinion, what is innovation and also what is the most exciting trend in the innovation in your industry?
Well, at BYD, we all at BYD have the pleasure of working for our leader, Chairman Wang. Chairman Wang is the founder and president and chairman of BYD, truly one of the visionary leaders. And everything that BYD has today is based on his core technologies and is built on the technologies that the chairman has not only had a part in developing personally, but with his visionary outlook, he's guiding the company. You can think of people like Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. Chairman Wang is, from my perspective, is essentially China's Henry Ford. And not only are the innovations in technology, but the implementation of the technology and the application of the technology. So the innovations for BYD are, we have a very innovative products and a huge percentage of engineers, practically 10% of our 180,000 person workforce is in engineering, designing and developing products. So the innovation, the difficulty in the innovation is figuring out what products to bring to market and how to bring them to market. But realistically, it's the application of the technology that BYD has tons and tons of things in the hopper, and which ones we choose and how we choose them. So right now, the company is looking to the application of the electric car, how it will be used. It's still a very nascent business and market. We do have people like companies like Tesla, GM, Nissan. Most of the major manufacturers are really coming out with electric cars, but BYD and Tesla are almost singularly focused on it being the central offering. As far as innovation is concerned for the average human being that's using the vehicles, it's the interface with the vehicle. Cars are basically cars, and like my friend Mr. X here stated, it's about safety and usability. But how we interface with the technology is really the innovation that I see as being the most impactful.
So in terms of interface between the car and the drivers, what is your view about in terms of the future driverless cars and also in the context of BYD?
So if any of you have seen BYD's cars, many of the models we offer already with a little remote control. So you can actually operate the car outside the vehicle via this small remote control. It's pretty ubiquitous in China. Here we haven't brought the remote control cars in any large numbers. But that's the first step to an autonomous vehicle. You can control it without having your hands on any controls in the car. It's being controlled remotely. Next, the computer would take it over and you would have an autonomous vehicle. I think the concern we would have on autonomous vehicles are the autonomous vehicles operating in conjunction with vehicles operated by people like you and me and the rest of us. It might make things very dangerous. When cars were first introduced here in the US and in Europe, the first places the cars were introduced, they were actually sharing the roads with horses and buggies. And there were a lot of accidents between cars and horses and buggies or carriages. So those are the kind of obstacles we would have. Most likely it'll be further out than most people think, and we might have to segregate the autonomous vehicles from the vehicles operated by the likes of us. But those are very exciting things, and we're already starting to experiment with cars with autopilot that allow hands-off control with a person in the operator's seat for short periods of time, driving in a straight line. But true autonomous vehicles that pick you up and drop you off and then go on their merry way without a driver, I think that's a ways out, at least 5 or 10 years out.
Well, thank you. Now, the next following question would be, now BYD is entering the US markets, but in this market there are other players as well. So to play in the global markets, what kind of innovation BYD is trying to develop or inculcate so that to compete successfully?
BYD is an amazingly vertically integrated company. We're the only manufacturer that's really developed and is currently manufacturing all of its batteries that go into its vehicles. The batteries are the real lifeblood of any electric vehicle, and that's BYD's strong suit. Above all, BYD is a battery company. BYD also, though, designs and manufactures our propulsion systems, our motors, our power electronics. The company makes just about every part that goes into the car. So that gives us a competitive advantage in that we control and own a lot of the technology that's used in the car and can optimize it to work in our car. We don't have to be beholden to so many vendors. But besides that, it's just an innovative company. BYD makes cars people like to drive. I really like to drive them. It's the driving experience in the BYD car. We've got a car named Tang, a very nice name, that's been very popular in China. I've had the pleasure of having one here in the US for a while. It's an amazing car. It does 0 to 60 miles an hour in less than 5 seconds. It goes over 200 kilometers on 1 liter of fuel. And it's all-wheel drive. It's a very spacious, very luxurious SUV. So I think the typical US driver wants a car they feel comfortable with, they feel safe in, and that they enjoy driving. And BYD delivers and will continue to deliver those types of vehicles.
I look forward to give it a try. Thank you. So I think that thank you very much for your very brief, very precise and concise introductions about how you view innovations in your company. So now I'm going to switch gear to talk a little more general questions so we'll learn from your perspective as well. Now, reflecting upon the 3 companies, in terms of advancement of scientific discovery or inventions at different stage. So perhaps vitamins is more the traditional industry. Mr. Xu talked about the commercial aircraft. There's no new truly breakthrough for a long time. But BYD is considered as more newer, more technology, electric car. So the different stages of the development, if you will. Then the question is that we're curious about what is innovation to help a company in general to make a transition from a product-based company to maybe a product and service type of industry. So, what role do you think innovation can make help a company to make that kind of transition?
I'll start with our company. I think that I still think that the whole health nutrition field is still very much in its infancy. While we feel like we've got multivitamins and all the letter vitamins and supplements and all that, I still think it's very early because I think that there is a ton of education that has yet to be handed out to consumers. I envision a day where we will be able to do, perhaps we have showrooms in countries where you go into the showroom and you have analytics done of your health, your blood, whatever, and it shows where your deficiencies are, and then we match up products to do that, and we educate people on those products. So I think there's a long way. I think we have a long way to go. Plus, I think just in general, there's still a lot of things we don't know yet. I think when you get in the areas of brain health, it's obviously in its infancy. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think science will play a big part of that.
Well, you're telling me that I have more pills to take, especially for my brain. Yes. Any other comment from the other two gentlemen in terms of how innovation can help a company to make the transition?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes. Well, just as I mentioned, reliability is much more important than innovation, usually in this industry. But I do agree that innovation plays a very important role in the process of transition. And we are designing and manufacturing the first jetliner in China. Yes, according to the way in the ways that both Boeing and Airbus are doing. But at the same time, we do have a research center which is based in Beijing, the capital of China, and we have some engineers there. They are thinking of how the airplanes, how the commercial jetliners will be in 30 years or 40 years time. So maybe in the future, when we are taking the aircraft, we are sitting in the chair, and all of us around us, especially on the top, they are made of glass. And when you are flying, you can see the cloud around you when you are taking off and when you are landing. So, and if you want to see if you want to watch different views, and they can make it, and at the same time, they invite some children to share different ideas with the engineers. So yes, we are doing that at this stage, but that's not our focus now. So we are just making the traditional aircraft so far. Yeah.
Okay, good. Anything to add to it, Brandon?
Some of the innovations I'm looking at BYD is how to actually partner with service operators and service companies, actually do joint ventures, own part of, let's say, for instance, in New York City, we have a joint venture with Uber, where we're actually offering our vehicle on an hourly rental basis for the drivers in New York City. People that can't operate a vehicle for 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week. They only want to drive it 8 hours a week. So we're offering the vehicles on an hourly basis where they can actually come in, pick up a fully charged electric vehicle, drive it for a shift, and then return it when they're done. So it's a combination of car sharing and ride sharing. That's a relatively innovative, non-tried approach that we're experimenting with 30 cars, but it's still an experiment which will yield some data and hopefully some results and a meaningful partnership and relationship where we have an ongoing new revenue stream from the vehicles.
Well, that's definitely some form of a combination of product and services. It's very innovative. Thank you. So next one is I'm thinking that is all three companies are Chinese companies, and all three of you are now working in the States. So you have observed in terms of how engineers, scientists, or managers, they operate in the different countries. So we're curious to learn from you regarding, do you observe different approach or different mechanisms to encourage innovations in US as well as in China? Is there any similarities or any differences you would like to comment on?
Okay, I'll go first. So I've worked for this company now for coming up on 2 years, and truthfully, it's been overwhelming in terms of how collaborative it is with our folks in China, as well as the Chinese community in general. I'm on WeChat. I've been on WeChat for a year. I have a whole host of contacts on there, from from bankers that we've met, from investors, from advisors, M&A. It's a very close community, but I like it because I just find it that there's a lot of sharing of ideas. There's a lot of there's some of the ganbei, we're having a few drinks, but I find it refreshing, because I think that we're talking more and we're learning from each other, and so I actually think that's something that is something more that America could adopt, quite frankly.
Good to know.
Yes, we do recruit. I think nearly 200 talents from around the world, working in Shanghai and also in Beijing of China. And we also recruited local engineers here in Newport Beach of California. And both Chinese engineers and engineers from around the world work together, and they share information, and definitely they have conflict in designing, in researching the aircraft. Yes, in some ways, the thinking sometimes, to some extent, is quite different. It's quite different, and so we are also imagining to find ways to collaborate all of them. But anyway, most of the engineers we recruited from, for example, in America, they are much more experienced. They are much more maybe for the age, they are a bit elder, yeah. But for our young engineers, most of them are in their 20s or 30s, because we have China have a shortage of a lack of engineering talents in the civil aviation industry. So they are young, and so in that case, under these circumstances, they have conflict, but they so far it's very good. They find ways to push forward the different programs. So far it's good.
I have a similar experience as Mr. X here. The China team and the U.S. team, the technology transfer can be a little tricky. There's gaps in communication, maybe even understanding what the other person's saying clearly, or misunderstanding what people are saying. But also there's an incredible cultural difference between the U.S. and China. China's, I would have never have guessed this until I worked for a Chinese company, but the Chinese, in my mind's eye, before I worked in a Chinese company, I expected the Chinese to be very serious, very, almost like the Japanese, very conservative people. It's the exact opposite. The Chinese are very chaotic, fun-loving. It's all about the meal. There's always conversations going on. It's a completely different dynamic than I expected it to be.
True.
And transferring technology is always difficult. People feel all kinds of things when they're giving up their technology to another person, even within the same company. We have that problem internally in the US team, let alone the China team to the US team. There are hurdles to be had. There's a lot of trust that needs to be built. But if I had to say the biggest gap and obstacle to overcome, it would be the melding of the two cultures and understanding where the other group is coming from when they're discussing things and describing things. It's very critical to understand that because people are still people and we all have our own things that occur to us on a personal level, and even when we're at work that happens, and that it's difficult to explain to people unless you see it happening, but some of you that have worked in the two cultures and worked intimately with both cultures, you'll see that the Chinese culture approaches work very differently. The Chinese people are very serious about their work, but they're also, like I said, very fun-loving, playful people. And the Chinese seem to love chaos. They love activity and action going on. They just love it. And here in the US, it scares a lot of us. You know? So those would probably be the biggest obstacles that I've seen. But from my experience, working together closely with the China team, we've really created some amazing things. Mm-hmm. And initially, my experience with China was you get products made cheaply and in large volumes, and that's what you go to China for. Now China is producing cutting-edge technology. It's really amazing what's happened just in the past 15 years in China. And it's amazing to be part of that experience.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your insight. You're absolutely right. I think this is exactly why we have this kind of forum, such that we have a very international mix of audience to learn from all three of you regarding mutual understanding and mutual respect are very critical to spark innovation across different cultures, right? So I would just notice with a clock in front of me, then I know that our audience is waiting for a long time to ask the questions from you, so to learn more from you, from your perspective. So I'm going to open up to the floor so that they can come forward to, with the questions with our guests.
My question is really around the forces that either drive or stifle innovation. Things like competitive landscape, things like regulatory compliance, legal, internal and external. So would you say in general it's harder to innovate, or would you say it's easier to innovate? My background is in pharmaceutical and biotech, and I know in the last 10, 20 years, it's becoming harder due to regulatory landscape, et cetera, as well as the fact that it's kind of like, there's so many like therapeutic things that have come out already, so it's really hard to truly have new therapeutic type technologies to keep growing. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
So is your question is about, is innovation is become more difficult now than before?
Than before, that's
in
right.
General?
In general.
Okay.
Well, for our business, which is a little bit similar to what you've come from, it's definitely more difficult. We had a big thing in our industry where the New York Attorney General went after manufacturers and retailers because they basically said that we weren't selling what we were supposed to be selling. That caused a lot of heartache. It caused a lot of legal spending. Fortunately, we were able to get the facts out that the testing methodology that they were using was incorrect, but it obviously leaves a black mark on the industry. And so I think that at least in our field, we're going to see a lot more focus on how do we get consumers more comfortable with what we're selling. So I think that's definitely a trend in the future.
I have a question for Brandon. Just want to know, like, for BYD, what's BYD's plan in the U.S. market? Is it going to focus on consumer vehicles or still focusing on the fleet, like buses? Thank you.
That's a very good question, Kenneth. BYD, and it's a question I'm asked all the time. The reason they put fleet VP on my title is that they don't want consumers to be bugging me all the time about cars and when I'm going to be selling them. But BYD's plan is in the next few years to actually sell consumer cars here. And a lot of you here in the audience are pretty familiar with the BYD cars in China. Now that we've gone to a more mature, an incredibly mature, incredibly attractive product, we're working on the plan to not only bring them here to the US, but sell them to consumers. And it's, there are regulations about, for instance, dealership regulations. Tesla's dealing with this right now on how to sell Teslas. They're not, manufacturers sometimes are not allowed to sell cars directly to customers. So those are the types of things that are, that BYD is addressing right now, is the Tesla model for selling the vehicles the right way. I think our biggest obstacle in that area is the model to actually sell, service, provide after-sales support for these vehicles in the US market. Expect them in the next year or two.
So hi everyone, my name is Yen, and I'm a first-year mechanical engineering student, a master student. And I guess my question is more for Mr. Xu and Mr. Riley. What do you think is the difference between Chinese engineer and American engineer, and what do you expect more from Chinese engineers? Thank you.
Yeah. Just as Brenda mentioned, that there's quite a difference. The biggest difference between Chinese engineer and the American engineer is the cultural background. So I think that's the most difference. And as for Chinese engineers, most of the Chinese people are more, most of the time they respect their authority. And respecting authority has a long history in Chinese tradition. So usually, our young engineers tend not to speak more openly, but their American counterpart usually talk openly and they share much more information and present very new ideas during the brainstorming session. So maybe I think the cultural background maybe is a barrier for them to share information between each other. So, but as for the making a target and the decision to achieve it, I think that's the same case, both for Chinese engineers and for the American engineers. So in that case, there's not too much difference for them.
It's good to know. So I have the last question. So before we break, our school's tagline is "Thinking the Next." So my last question to all three of you, it would be, what kind of advice will you give to our MBA students if they're interested in innovation and entrepreneurship? What kind of advice will you give them to prepare for the next?
I would say that building your network is probably one of the most important things they can do. The more people you know, the more people that you communicate with, I think that's just it's gonna help you with ideas. It's gonna help you, think about the future. I strongly advise anybody that either works for me or that I ever interview that, the thing that's always worked for me is I try to take things off my boss's desk. So I'm always raising my hand. What else can I do? So I would encourage everybody to really try to be proactive about taking on more responsibility. That's to me about thinking about the next.
Great advice.
Yep. For me, I just suggest our young friends here to stand on firm ground when we are talking about innovation or imagination. Because maybe I'm from the industry of is more traditional. So sometimes I met young guys who are just in their 20s. And he or she is talking about a corporate strategy with me. So in next, I suggest he or her to learn from his or her colleagues first, and know the whole process of the operation of the company, and also learn from the experience of others, and on that ground they can talk about innovation or meditation and looking for new fields to develop. Yeah, that's what I suggest.
Thank you. Brandon, you have the final words.
The final word I would have on innovation, besides echoing my esteemed panelists here, I would have to say that the passion that you have is what's going to allow you to innovate. Without passion, there's no meaningful innovation in the world. So I'm sure you've all gotten to the place where you're passionate about what you're studying and what you want to do. Once you find that, be passionate about it, joyful in doing it, and you will innovate.
It's
Yeah,
remarkable.
excellent.
All three of you truly lead by examples in terms of networking, in terms of talking to people with passion about what you do. So on behalf of our school, I want to take this opportunity to thank all three of you for taking your busy schedule to share your insights with us about innovation and in terms of how to take the company, the industry forward, and also want to thank all three of you for bringing more jobs to California. So on this note, thank you very much.